Harley Nolan slammed her car door shut. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she stared at the luxury black Maserati she'd accidentally parked half an inch too close to. "I swear I didn't see the sign," she muttered to herself, clutching her oversized tote bag like it could somehow save her from the mess she'd just created. The blazing gold reserved for executive suite guest plaque glinted under the Los Angeles sun, bold and clear. Her rusty old Civic looked like a joke next to the sleek Italian machine. She was just here to drop off a catering invoice 10 minutes tops, but of course, her luck had other plans. She was halfway across the hotel lobby when the front desk clerk called out, "Excuse me, miss." "Is that your silver Honda in spot 1? Harley froze. "Maybe. There's a guest trying to park. He's waiting outside." "Oh my God." Harley turned on her heel and practically sprinted back outside, and there he was. The man leaning against the Maserati looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion campaign and into her worst moment. Tall, broad shoulders under a navy suit that looked custom-tailored. His jaw was clenched, his sharp features made even more intimidating by those dark sunglasses he pulled down just enough to shoot her a look. "I am so sorry," Harley blurted, heart racing. "I didn't realize it was reserved. I was just running in to drop something off." I swear. He lifted one brow. "You always park in CEO spots for fun." "Wait, CEO? I know. I didn't know it was yours," she said quickly, stepping toward her car. "I'll move right now." "Really, I didn't mean to," she trailed off when he stepped forward and opened her car door for her. "Please." "I insist." His voice was smooth, but there was something in it teasing. Dry amusement. Harley climbed into her car, mortified, and reversed out of the spot so fast she nearly ran over a potted plant. She pulled into a regular space across the lot and buried her face in her hands. She couldn't believe that just happened. By the time she returned to the lobby, he was gone. Harley dropped off the invoice, grabbed a complimentary mint to survive the humiliation, and told herself she'd never see him again. She was wrong. 2 days later, Harley was back at the same luxury hotel for a tasting event with her catering job. She'd worked for Blue Fig Catering for years, small company, boutique weddings, and the occasional high-end corporate event. Today was one of the big ones. She was setting up mini lamb sliders and truffle risotto bites when she heard a low voice behind her. Still parking in the wrong spaces. Her stomach dropped. She turned, and there he was. Navy suit again, no sunglasses this time. His dark brown eyes were sharp, but his mouth was curved up now, undeniably amused. Harley blinked. "You," he extended a hand. "Talon Jackson." She hesitated before shaking it. "Harley Nolan." His grip was firm, warm, earth-shattering. "I didn't expect to see you again," she said, trying to sound casual while her heart pounded. "I own the place," Talon said casually, glancing around the ballroom. "I tend to show up." "Wait, the whole hotel? You're the CEO of Jackson Properties." He gave a small shrug. "Hotels, resorts, a few private residences. This one's my favorite, though." Of course it was. Harley stared at him, unsure what to say. This was the kind of man who walked into a room and owned it literally. "I'm just here with the catering team," she said, motioning to the table behind her. "Not, important." "Funny," Talon replied, studying her. "You're the only person I remember from that day." She blinked. He reached over and picked up one of the sliders, biting into it like he did this all the time. "This is incredible," he said, nodding toward the setup. "Did you make these?" "I prepped them. My boss did the final plating." "You should tell your boss you're the only reason I showed up today." Harley flushed. Was he flirting? She laughed awkwardly. "You didn't come here to scold me about my parking again." "No," he said, eyes on hers. "I came because I couldn't stop thinking about the woman who ran out of the lobby like her shoes were on fire." She covered her face. "That was mortifying." "It was honest," he said, "and kind of refreshing." A pause. "Then, would you have dinner with me?" Harley stared. What? I know it's short notice," Talon continued smoothly. "But I'm leaving for New York tomorrow, back in 4 days. I'd like to take you out before then." Harley hesitated. This man was a billionaire, probably, polished, powerful. And she was paycheck to paycheck, working catering gigs to cover rent. He must have seen the hesitation in her eyes because he added softly, "I'm not asking you to be impressed, Harley. I'm asking because I want to know you." The room seemed to fade. It was just him, standing there with heat in his gaze, waiting for her answer. And despite every reason in the world to say no, she said, "Okay." That night, she wore the only dress she owned that didn't have a stain on it. It was black, simple, tight enough to make her feel self-conscious until she saw the way Talon looked at her. He took her to a rooftop restaurant in West Hollywood, where the city glittered below like a galaxy. They laughed. Talked about everything from childhood dreams to the weirdest jobs they ever had. He told her about losing his dad young, taking over the company by 25. She told him about her mom's bakery and how it went under when she was 16. By dessert, she wasn't thinking about how rich he was. She was just thinking about how good he made her feel. When he walked her to her car, this time parked perfectly legally, he leaned in, slower than he needed to, like he was giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips were warm, steady, and when he kissed her, she forgot everything else. Afterward, she touched his chest and whispered, "I'm still sorry about the parking thing." He grinned, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I'm not. If you hadn't parked there, I never would have met you." She laughed, heart pounding, and just like that, everything changed. Harley blinked at the empty space in her planner where her next week's shifts should have been. She hadn't even had her second coffee yet when her manager, Nina, had pulled her aside at the catering kitchen. "You're off the schedule until further notice," Nina said, tossing a plastic-wrapped tray of croissants into a delivery box. I'm sorry, what?" Harley's voice rose. "Why?" "The Jackson Properties contract." Nina didn't look up. "They requested a switch. Said they wanted a different company for the full slate of events next quarter." Harley's stomach dropped. "But that was ours. We've been prepping for that for months." Nina finally met her eyes. They were polite, said it wasn't personal. Just a pivot in creative direction. Harley stood frozen. "So I lose my shifts because someone didn't like the flavor of the risotto?" "Don't be dramatic," Nina snapped. "You're the new girl on a small team. You'll bounce back. Maybe call that guy who asked you out at the tasting. He seemed interested. Maybe he can pull a few strings." "I'm not asking for favors from someone I just met," Harley said tightly. Nina shrugged and went back to packing. "Suit yourself." The walk home felt longer than usual. Her boots pinched and the wind picked up just enough to tangle her hair into an unbrushed mess. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone buzzed, unknown number. She hesitated, then picked up. "Harley Nolan." "That's a very formal greeting," Talon's voice answered, low and warm. Her shoulders relaxed in spite of herself. "How did you get my number?" "I asked the hotel manager. He owed me a favor." "Is that how you usually get what you want?" There was a pause. "Only when it's worth it." She sank onto the arm of her thrifted couch, heart picking up again. "Should I be flattered or mildly disturbed?" "I was hoping you'd be free for dinner tomorrow. I've chartered a yacht for a client meeting, but I'd like someone interesting at the table." "I'm not a party favor." "No, you're not. That's why I'm asking." She closed her eyes. Her job was gone. Her fridge held a bottle of mustard and half a lemon. Saying yes wasn't just tempting, it was survival with a side of indulgence. "Where do I meet you?" "I'll have a car pick you up." She opened her mouth to argue, but he added, "No arguments. Just wear something that makes you feel powerful." The line went dead. The next evening, the car that pulled up wasn't just sleek, it was absurd. Midnight blue, leather interior, and a driver who greeted her by name and opened the door like she was royalty. The yacht was docked at Marina del Rey. It was less a boat and more a floating palace, glowing with soft lighting and the sound of jazz drifting from somewhere above. Talon stood on the upper deck, backlit by the setting sun, one hand in his pocket, glass of champagne in the other. His tie was loose around his neck, like he'd just walked out of a boardroom and onto a movie set. "You clean up well," he said as she approached. "I almost didn't come." He handed her the champagne. "I'm glad you did." They sat beside the railing as the yacht pulled away from the dock. Waitstaff brought out seared scallops on porcelain plates, and no one mentioned contracts or business. So, Harley said, watching the water shimmer beneath them, what does a man who owns half the city actually want? Talon leaned back, face unreadable. To disappear sometimes, she looked at him. That's not something I expected to hear. You think I like spending every night at charity galas and board dinners? I thought men like you built empires because they loved it. I built mine because I had no choice. I kept it because I didn't know what else to be. She didn't know what to say to that, so she said the truth. I got pulled from the catering schedule today. He turned his head toward her, eyes narrowing. Because of me, they said it was a creative shift. That's a lie, she shrugged. It's fine, not like I was climbing a ladder, I was just trying to stay above water. Talon's gaze didn't leave hers. I'll fix it. No, she said, sharper than she intended. You don't get to wave your money and make it disappear. I need to figure it out. He studied her for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Fair. The air between them shifted, thick and crackling. I didn't bring you here to rescue you, Harley. Then why did you? Because I can't stop thinking about you. The yacht rocked gently, but her stomach flipped for an entirely different reason. Talon, I know it's fast, I know it doesn't make sense. But I'm not interested in pretending. Harley stood up, needing space. She walked toward the bow, wind tugging at her hair. She didn't hear him follow, but then his voice came from just behind her. You always run when things get real, she turned. Do you always chase women who don't fit into your world? He didn't flinch. Maybe I'm tired of women who do. The honesty in his voice undid something in her. They stood there, the city skyline glowing behind them, the sea stretching infinitely in front. And without another word, she stepped into him. He took her face in his hands like she might break, and when he kissed her, she tasted salt, champagne, and the kind of risk that made everything else feel small. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "This feels like it shouldn't be happening." But it is, he said. And I'm not letting it go. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of Talon's downtown penthouse, casting gold across the white marble floors and minimalist furniture. Harley stood uncertainly just inside the entryway, taking in the sleek space that overlooked the entire city. Everything was quiet, except the distant hum of traffic far below. You live here? She asked, her voice softer than she expected. Talon closed the door behind them, his jacket already draped over one arm. Only when I'm not traveling. I have a place in London, a villa in Santorini, and a house in Aspen. But this one feels the most like home. Harley turned slowly, letting her eyes wander the open concept, the clean lines of the kitchen that belonged in a design magazine, the brushed brass light fixtures, the oversized abstract painting that took up half a wall. Feels more like an art gallery. He stepped beside her, unbuttoning his cuffs. That's the idea. I don't keep clutter, I like space, control. She glanced up at him. And where do people fit into that? I make room for the ones who matter. Talon's phone buzzed on the counter, but he ignored it. Instead, he nodded toward a polished wood cabinet near the corner. I had something brought in for you. Harley stepped closer, then paused. Why? Because I wanted to. He opened the doors to reveal a mannequin dressed in a breathtaking midnight blue gown. It shimmered subtly even in the muted light, the fabric cascading like water. Next to it stood a pair of silver heels, delicate and clearly expensive, her breath caught. You bought me a dress for tonight. What's tonight? A charity gala. I'm expected to attend. I'd rather not go alone. She blinked. You want me to be your date? Yes, Talon. Harley hesitated. I don't belong at those kinds of events. You belong wherever you decide to stand, he said simply. And I want you beside me. She looked at the dress again. It was stunning and terrifying. I don't know how to glide around a ballroom like some socialite, she muttered. I can barely walk in those heels. Then don't glide, just walk in like you own the place. Her laugh was shaky. You make it sound so easy. He reached for her hand, warm and steady. I'll be right there. The gala was held at a private estate in Beverly Hills. the kind of property with a circular drive and ornamental fountains. The valet barely glanced at her as she stepped out of the town car, but the moment she entered the foyer, eyes turned. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and the buzz of polished conversation filled the air. Servers glided through the crowd with trays of champagne and amuse-bouches that looked too pretty to eat. Harley felt every inch of her borrowed elegance. From the silk lining of the gown to the weight of the diamond bracelet Talon had clasped around her wrist in the car, no explanation, just a quiet "it suits you." He hadn't left her side, not once. "This is surreal," she whispered, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing tray. Talon leaned close. "You're handling it better than most people born into it." She was about to respond when a woman approached them. Red lipstick, tailored emerald dress, sharp eyes that flicked over Harley like she was scanning for flaws. "Talon," the woman said with a tight smile. "I didn't realize you were bringing someone tonight." "Elise," he nodded once. "Harley Nolan, Harley, this is Elise Dorrington. We worked together on a development project in Dubai." Elise extended a hand. Charmed, Harley shook it, trying not to overthink the way Elise's gaze lingered. "You look fresh," Elise said. Harley blinked. "Thanks. It's my first time at one of these." Elise turned her smile on Talon like Harley wasn't there. "You've always had interesting taste." Harley opened her mouth, but Talon's voice cut through. "Elise, I'm sure you remember how much I hate polite insults disguised as compliments. Let's not do that tonight." For a beat, the woman's face didn't move, then she laughed, still blunt as ever. Talon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Only when necessary." Elise turned to Harley. "Enjoy your evening, dear." As she disappeared into the crowd, Talon exhaled slowly. Harley turned to him. "She hates me. She doesn't know you. She doesn't want to." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "That's not your problem. She thinks I'm temporary." Talon's jaw tightened. "Are you?" Harley looked away. They didn't speak for a while after that. He introduced her to a few business partners, a philanthropist from Singapore and a film producer who kept winking at her like she was an actress he half remembered. But Harley couldn't stop feeling like a guest in a life that wasn't hers. Later on the balcony, Talon found her watching the skyline. "Are you regretting coming?" She shook her head. "No, just wondering what happens when this ends." "What makes you think it has to?" She turned. "Because people don't live in bubbles. This is your world, Talon. Mine is shared apartments and second-hand appliances. You say that like it's a problem. It is when the gap's this wide. You talk about control and space and not liking clutter. I don't have the luxury of any of that. I've spent most of my life just trying to keep the lights on." He stepped closer. "I never invited you here because of how you grew up. I invited you because of who you are now." "And who is that?" "A woman who doesn't let anyone buy her, who says no even when it costs her. Who looks me in the eye like she sees through the entire empire I built and doesn't flinch." Her throat tightened. "I'm scared." "So am I." That admission, quiet and stripped of any defense, nearly undid her. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "What's that?" "A plane ticket," she blinked. "To where?" "New York. I have to fly there for a few meetings. I'd like you to come with me." Her heart was in her throat. "As what?" He didn't hesitate. "As the person I want beside me while I figure out how to rewrite everything I thought I knew." She stared at him, and for the first time that night, she didn't feel out of place. She felt seen. The jet's leather seats were softer than any chair Harley had ever sat in, and the gentle hum of engines beneath them was so steady it barely registered. She hadn't said much since takeoff. New York loomed ahead, but her thoughts were still tangled in Los Angeles. Talon sat beside her, crisp white shirt open at the collar, his attention focused on a folder of documents. She watched him scan the pages with a level of focus that made her feel like she was watching a different species. He could run empires, fly cross-country without blinking, and make decisions that shifted markets. Meanwhile, she'd spent the night before wondering if she'd overdrawn her bank account with a grocery run. "I've been thinking," Harley said, breaking the silence. Talon didn't look up right away. "About what?" She hesitated. About what happens when you're done flying me around on jets and introducing me to developers and film producers. I didn't do any of that for show, I know, but I'm still trying to figure out where I fit in. Or if I do, he closed the folder, finally turning to face her. You think I'm playing some kind of game? No, she said. I think you're used to everyone fitting neatly into your life. I don't. Talon leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees. You think I don't feel the difference? I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who say yes before I finish the question. You're the first person who's ever made me second-guess myself. That's not a complication. That's rare. Harley looked out the window where clouds drifted past like slow-moving islands. I'm not looking for someone to rescue me. I'm not offering that, he said. I'm offering a seat beside me, not beneath me. She turned to him, something sharp in her chest softening. Then stop making it so easy to forget I had a life before you. Talon's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes flickered. You think I don't wonder what this looks like from your side? You think I don't lie awake wondering if I'm pulling you into something you'll hate me for later? She blinked. You lie awake. I haven't been able to sleep properly since the night we met. The truth of it hit her harder than she expected. The jet touched down just after dusk. A car was waiting on the tarmac, sleek and silent, but Talon didn't rush her. He held the door open, let her take in the skyline before they drove into the city. New York was all steel and rhythm, alive in a way that felt different from Los Angeles. Colder. Faster. But somehow, standing beside him, she didn't feel small. His apartment here was different, darker tones, older architecture, a view of the river that made the windows look like paintings. She didn't ask how much it cost or how often he stayed. She just followed him inside, feeling the weight of it all settle in her chest. The following afternoon, Talon brought her to a private art gallery where an installation he'd sponsored was opening. She wore a tailored high-necked dress he'd had delivered to the apartment that morning with only a handwritten note. You don't need armor, but this felt like power. The gallery buzzed with quiet conversation and clinking glasses. It wasn't the same crowd as the Los Angeles gala, no paparazzi, just insiders and collectors. But the tension in her shoulders didn't ease until Talon gently pressed his hand to her back. You don't have to impress anyone here, he said under his breath. They're the ones trying to impress me. She turned her head slightly. Doesn't that get exhausting? He laughed quietly. Only when I care what they think. Lately, that's less and less. A man approached then, older with silver in his beard and a sharp gaze. Talon. Welcome back, he said, shaking his hand. And who's this? Harley Nolan, Talon said. She's the one who convinced me to back this exhibition. Harley's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't even known this was something he'd been considering. The man offered her a genuine smile. Then I owe you a thank you. This is the best work we've shown in years. After he walked away, she turned to Talon. You gave me credit for something I didn't do. I gave you credit for the part you played, he said. You made me look at the proposal again. I saw something I hadn't before. She didn't know what to say to that. Instead, she let herself enjoy the moment, the quiet pride blooming in her chest, the way Talon's fingers brushed hers when no one was watching. Later that night, they stood on the balcony of his apartment, the city glittering beneath them. Harley leaned against the railing, the wind catching her hair as she stared at the river. I've never felt more out of place and more seen at the same time, she said. Talon stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. That's how I felt the first time I built something of my own, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff but finally looking in the right direction. She turned in his arms. I don't want to lose myself in all this. Then don't, he said. Just bring yourself with you wherever we go. She rested her head against his chest. The rhythm of his heart was steady, grounding. After a long moment, she pulled back slightly. What are we doing, Talon? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. I didn't plan this, he said quietly. I didn't think I'd meet someone who could disarm me just by walking into the wrong parking space, but here we are. He opened the box. Inside was a ring simple, elegant, a single brilliant stone set in gold. I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to keep being exactly who you are, with me. Tears burned behind her eyes as the weight of the moment settled around them. Yes, she whispered. He slid the ring onto her finger, his hand steady. She kissed him slow, certain, and deep, and when they broke apart, she laughed softly. I guess parking in the wrong place really does change your life. Talon smiled, eyes filled with something unshakable. Only when it leads you to the right person. The first snow of the season dusted the rooftops outside the brownstone window, softening the edges of the city. Inside, the fire crackled low in the hearth, illuminating the quiet warmth of the living room. Harley sat curled into the corner of the sofa, her legs tucked under her, a thick throw wrapped around her shoulders. Talon was stretched out beside her, one arm resting casually along the back of the couch, his fingers occasionally brushing her shoulder. They had been in New York for nearly a month now. What had started as a spontaneous trip had shifted into something more rooted, not permanent, but settled in a way that made Harley feel like she wasn't just visiting his world anymore. She was part of it. "How long do you think we can stay off the radar?" Harley asked, watching the snow fall through the window. Talon glanced at her. "Do you want to be off the radar?" "I don't know," she said truthfully. "It's nice. Not having to perform. You never had to perform for me." "I know," she said, looking at him. "But the rest of the world doesn't know that." He shifted closer, the heat from his body grounding. "Then let them wonder I'm not living for them." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound so easy." "It wasn't, not until you." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was full, comfortable. A knock at the front door broke it. Harley frowned. "Expecting someone?" "No." She rose to answer it, padding barefoot across the Persian rug. When she opened the door, a man in a long wool coat stood holding a slim envelope, gloved hands extended. "For Mr. Jackson," he said before turning away. Harley brought it over as Talon stood, his brow lowering as he read the return address. "What is it?" He slid the letter open without answering. His eyes scanned the page, jaw tightening slightly. Harley watched him, her hand clutching the edge of her wrap. "Talon," he set the letter down. "It's from the board of Jackson Properties. They're requesting a formal statement." "About what?" "About you and me." Her heart kicked. "Why?" "Because I canceled the partnership with Dorrington Holdings last week. Eliza's father sits on our advisory panel. They're calling it a conflict of interest." "You canceled it," he nodded. "It was a toxic deal. I'd been looking for an excuse to shut it down. They just assumed it was because of you." "Was it?" He looked directly at her. "It was because I finally stopped pretending I didn't care what they thought." That happened long before Eliza opened her mouth. Harley exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. "So what now?" "I'll fly back to LA this weekend, call an emergency meeting, and remind them who built the company they're trying to control. Then I'll fly back to you." She hesitated. "You don't have to protect me, I can take it." "I'm not protecting you," he said. "I'm protecting what we're building." She felt that. Deep down. And it mattered. 3 days later, Harley stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her cheek as she rolled out dough on the marble island. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and orange zest. She hadn't told Talon, but she'd been testing recipes again, not for a job or a gig, but for herself. When the buzzer rang, she nearly dropped the rolling pin. He wasn't due back until morning. She opened the door to find him standing there, snow in his hair, his coat dripping onto the mat. His tie was gone. His shirt was half untucked. "You're back early," she said, surprised. "I couldn't wait until morning." He stepped inside and reached into his coat pocket. In his hand was a folded sheet of paper. He held it out. She took it and read the header, "Board Resolution. Motion to reinstate majority control to CEO Jackson T." Below that, 5 signatures. "They tried to push me out," he said. "I reminded them who owns 70% of the company. Then I left." Her eyes widened. "You won. I'm not playing their game anymore." She looked up at him. "Does this mean?" "It means I don't need anyone's permission to choose you." He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a second box, not velvet this time, but wood, smooth and warm in her hands. Inside was a simple gold band, set with a tiny diamond that caught the light just enough to sparkle. "I know we're already engaged," he said, "but this one's the one I want to see on your hand when we say vows. I had it made in Greece. Took 3 weeks. Talon. I know we could wait. I know we could plan something big, but I don't want big, I want now." "I want you." She stared at him, heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Are you asking me to marry you tonight?" "I'm asking you to marry me whenever you're ready. I just hope that's tonight." Tears filled her eyes as she dropped the rolling pin on the counter and threw her arms around his neck. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, tonight." They called the efficient Talon's driver new. They borrowed the rooftop of the neighboring building. The snow had stopped, leaving the sky clear and deep violet above them. Twinkle lights from the neighboring terrace cast soft gold across the makeshift aisle. Talon wore the same shirt he flew in with. Harley wore a white slip dress she hadn't touched since college. Their vows were whispered, unpolished, and real. "I promise not to run," Harley said, her voice shaking, "even when it's easier, even when I'm scared." "I promise to listen," Talon replied. "Even when I want to fix everything, even when I don't understand." The kiss that sealed it was quiet, reverent, the kind of kiss that didn't need witnesses to make it real. Afterwards, they returned to the apartment where the cinnamon rolls had overbaked slightly and the champagne they'd pulled from the fridge was warm. They didn't care. They curled up on the couch, her head on his chest, his fingers laced with hers. "You know," Harley said sleepily, "I never thought my life would look like this." "Neither did I. You really bought that ring in Greece." "I picked the stone from a market in Santorini." "The woman who sold it said it was for someone who'd change everything." "I didn't change everything. You changed me." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent. Inside, wrapped in warmth and the glow of something earned, something sacred, they stayed exactly where they were, no more running, no more proving, just two souls who had finally found home in each other.